This week, though, was a crazy week. The boys are back. The boys aren't working at Chipotle anymore. As Sam said, the boys are buying Chipotle now. We can afford one, maybe two bowls a week. Oh, that's good. Ben just drops off.
Not even just the bowls, but now we do double steak. We're doing avocado on the side and on top. And they tell you, well, look, it's double. They'll be like, what? It's, bro. They'll tell you, man, it's an extra $1.50. You know what we do? We slap that metal card down. We say we're back. This isn't a month ago. This isn't a month ago, guys.
This isn't 7 days ago.
The
thing that's back. Crazy with the market now, right? We're going through every single cycle, every single week, right? We're going through the greed index is back to all-time highs with crypto. I would say the greed's fully back with the markets. We got HIMS basically back at all-time highs, which is nice to see, or close to all-time highs. We have Hood back in the 60s. So I really can't complain, but it's just like, is this here to stay, right? Because even today the market's down, a little bit from the ATH.
Yeah, I mean, this is my thesis right now. I think that it's gonna rip because it's just kind of like, if you look at it, if you look at it from like a bigger perspective, I mean, a lot of people are kind of sidelined right now. Like, a lot of people are sidelined, and it might just cause more pressure, more upwards pressure. And I was telling Ben, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw all-time highs and the Democrats are still like, yeah, the Trump market's no good. He's no good for the stock market. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then a month later it can go down. So it's really kind of, you just have to play it day by day, and always remember that everything is on paper. When you cash out, when you sell, and you have your cash sitting there, then you could start counting your chickens. But until then, everything's on paper, everything is in liquid. So that's my
I think Trump got a ton of pressure from China and domestic stakeholders like Nike. Basically any consumer product company couldn't operate with the margins under the tariffs. And he did obviously meet with China. I think it was Switzerland hosted China and the US, and they had a summit. And in that summit, obviously there's a lot of positive outcomes, which I think was great. China agreed to curtail the fentanyl epidemic, or at least take a harder stance on fentanyl, which I think was obviously a big thing. And then the tariffs came down very substantially. I think it'd be great if China and the U.S. could have, a continued productive relationship and an open dialogue. I don't see a world that we have to go into it saying we're enemies, as opposed to, we're cooperative, very powerful partners, and we can both, lift each other up and play on each other's strengths.
Yeah, I think it's a really, geopolitics, business, negotiations is very interesting, right? Because historically, people think, oh, there's really only two ways you can do things, right? If you have an adversary, like China is, whether we like it or not, an adversary, right? You can either be like super aggressive and super combative, or you can just like let them walk all over you. And the previous administration and past administrations have let adversaries like China, like whoever else, kind of do whatever they want with very, very little pushback. Personally, I believe that's because some of the people in charge were benefiting directly from that. It's very easy in politics. You bribe a politician with 100 million, and then they allow you in your country to make 100 billion, right? So that's kind of the problem with scale and having certain people in positions of power. Now, Trump went in super, super combative against China. Everybody freaked out. Everybody was, crying about it. Oh my God, these tariffs, this, that, like it's over. Our relationship with China is done. We're never going to be able to, compete again. And it looks like this was all just a negotiation tactic, which is what we had said on the podcast on various episodes. And we had also mentioned the fentanyl thing, right? Like China stopping the fentanyl was always in their control. We talked about that 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, even longer maybe. And it looks like they're actually agreeing to do that.
I still don't really necessarily feel that the agreement, though, is like, I think when you have an agreement between two partners, like your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, or country to country, it needs to be very specific. We're going to curtail the fentanyl epidemic by doing XYZ. We are going to shut down a certain number of facilities. We're going to make it harder to get the licensing agreements that you need in order to produce or manufacture fentanyl. We're going to put procedure in place to, call the taxation related to these products. It's very vague, even still, about how they're going to go about that. So I really don't know that that's going to curtail it as much as we need to see it curtailed. I don't think we fully understand the flow and supply chain right now. I don't think the U.S. has done a great job of reporting on the fentanyl epidemic, right? Because we theoretically believe that it comes from China. We know a lot of drugs are manufactured from China. And then we believe a lot of the flow goes through Mexico, and then it's coming into the US. But we haven't really outlined those numbers. So I think it's a very difficult thing to say or to measure, right, of how that's going to change and like what that agreement necessarily is. But I am glad that there obviously was a positive outcome there. And it makes, for me, like running an e-commerce business, I can start bringing in product in immediately. It'll be interesting to see like what the port situation is now, because ports are basically dead for the last month while the tariff situation was going on, because it just was unprofitable to operate a business like that. Now we're going to see ports speed up rapidly again. So there's a huge demand again, and there's obviously also a pretty good supply. So, overall very excited. We saw a huge lift in a lot of retail stocks. I think you guys obviously saw a big bump in the portfolios this week too, I imagine.
We're basically back to, I think, actually over, maybe even a little bit better than right before the whole tariff business started or when the overreaction happened. I definitely agree. I hate when there's very vague agreements, because it kind of always just feels like a little half-assed, kind of when the president of Mexico is like, yeah, we're going to start looking a little bit more into the cartel. And I mean, that sounds great and all. I mean, it's good, like optics, it's good PR, but like you said, we definitely need some real, what's happening. But this is a step in the right direction. China is taking some responsibility. They understand that it's coming from them. And like Ben said, it used to be either one way or the other. Well, that only was because the country wasn't respected. If you have a leader that's respected in the country, then you come at the negotiations a little bit differently. And I feel like this just showed the resilience of the American people, because look, we faced a huge pullback. I mean, it kind of didn't even feel real now that we're kind of recouping, but it was intense, man. I mean, it really felt very COVID, very
Everyone's screaming recession, right?
A very recession. I mean, you had people talking about bonds. I mean, look at gold. I mean, it's just so much.
Held its price though, which is also something that not scares me, but it's something that I think we do need to be hyper aware of, is the fact that gold is holding its price right now.
Yeah.
And
We're
I
not
think
out of
that
it.
we
It
did
didn't have
have the blinds just yet. And I think a lot of people are still, the big people I'm studying are still calling that there's going to be, a bounce. And I hope we continue the trajectory that we're in right now, but when we do see this volatility where we go from literally almost zero on the fear and greed index in crypto all the way back to full greed in just a few days, right? That does signal a big problem. So I think we're in what you'd call like a hopium complex right now, which is like a combination of opium and hope, right?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. That's what I'm saying. I mean, listen.
Are you guys taking any money off the table right now, given the issue?
Yeah, so I have been net selling over the last week. So I bought heavily in April, really heavily, and not even just allocating cash that I had, but also like selling certain stocks. I sold all of my Starbucks, I sold all of my Toyota, I sold like a good amount of my Apple stocks that I think have like less potential, and bought like more risk on higher growth assets like the AMDs, like the Amazons and Metas and things like that. So, and then some smaller cap companies.
And a perfect strategy, right, is what you said, Ben, where we see these highs, right, like we're seeing right now, and even in the last couple of days, and you take some off the table, and then in a volatile market, you can play it, and that's saying that Trump will probably do something again that triggers a market downturn, right? Just looking at the last, several months, he's probably going to do something again that causes the market to go way down. That presents another buying opportunity for these stocks that have intrinsic value. And I think that, that's kind of what we're doing in our group right now, is we're buying at these lows, things like, NVIDIA, Hood, HIMS, things that we believe, will rebound very quickly, which they have been very consistently. Even crypto, right? I think if you had theoretically just bought Bitcoin every time the market dumps, it's very consistently 7 or 8 times rebounded to very close to 100K, or 98, 99K from lows of 74K.
Yeah.
So you literally could be making 25% compounding every time the market goes down. Every time you're taking these screenshots, like we're all doing right now, we should be selling,
Yeah,
right?
and I'll say this, I never would encourage anybody to ever empty their portfolio, like clear out their portfolio, turn it into cash, and then say, I'm gonna get out at the top, I'm gonna get all in at the bottom. I think that's insane. Like the amount of people that could do that is probably like single digit amount of people on the entire planet who have the skill set and the ability to actually get back in and time the market perfectly. But what I think is smart to do if you're like a serious, sophisticated investor is to take profits and take things off the board that feel like right now I hunt for good value, right? I'm not seeing much good value in the market right now. There's maybe one company that I'm actually buying right now um, at these prices, and that's UNH, which we can talk about. But as an investor, when I'm looking through dozens and dozens and dozens of companies, and I say this one is pretty close to fair value, this one's pretty close to fair value, this one might be overvalued, it doesn't make sense to be buying, right? And you look at then I look at the fear and greed index, and it's high. It's on fear and it's on greed. Sorry, and it's like, oh, that makes total sense. Like there aren't a lot of deals in the space. People are greedy, and the way most people invest, whether you're retail or institutional, because institutionals do this all the time, right? They're almost no different from retail investors, except for that it's their job to like manage other people's money. But psychologically, they are very often just like a regular person who buys the top and panics when the stocks go down. I think it's
Funny because like
yeah,
examples, Kathy Woods has been like consistently mistiming the market like at an unbelievable rate. She sells
yeah.
Palantir at a low and then it rebounds, so rapidly after her
And
sell. It's
she
insane.
manages tens of billions of dollars. I'm just gonna put this out there. We can clip this. I would be willing to bet that somewhere between $5 and $10 trillion is being of institutional money, right? Whether it's pension funds, retirement funds, endowment funds, whatever they may be, are being managed by people that I would probably consider like subpar investors, right? So you have trillions and trillions of dollars being managed by people that don't beat the S&P, that don't beat the Nasdaq, that don't even beat like some of the value indexes. They just don't because they don't have it in them. What they are really good at is sales and is like client relations. Like they can lose you money or they can perform badly, but they'll take you out for a steak dinner or something and make you feel good and hold your hand and you won't take your money out. So that's the world that we're
Yeah,
in. And I think if you're
it's a
an
game.
I think yeah, just to wrap up the point, I think like if you're an independent investor, if you're a retail investor, if you're someone who's sophisticated on Twitter looking at like high quality things, the reason I found out about HIMS is through Twitter. The reason I found out about Palantir is because I followed Peter Thiel for like 10 years. The reason I found out about Robinhood early is because I was using Robinhood. You know what I mean? If you're like on the ball, on the money, I think it's very, very, very doable to outperform high institutional investors if you are actually like knowing what's going on and have a lot of discipline and investment like skills in terms of making decisions.
Yeah, I don't think it takes that much skill. Like I agree with you. It's just a matter of being on Twitter, thinking about where trends are at, right? Like we all know AI is the future. Like if you're saying, oh, AI is not the future, like what are you doing right now, right? And like not having a position. And I really interesting one I was looking at Instagram Reel and it was like, why are you not buying these companies? And then it showed the meeting that Trump had in Saudi Arabia this week. And so he's meeting with the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And who's in the room, right? It's Elon Musk, Alex Karp, the CEO of AMD, Jensen Huang. Those are all the companies that are the future, right? The reason that the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, who has access to who even knows $1 trillion plus, most likely wants those people there is because that's the future and those companies are going to rise and they have the spotlight on them. And at least for the next 5 years, they're going to be the heads of industry. And that's what we need to be paying attention to is who is in the room, who's able to pull leverage. And I think Palantir is still very interesting, right? Because the stock is super high, right? But that's not really how the market operates. It doesn't matter that there's not like a true intrinsic value with like where the stock price is at. And anyone that says, oh, the company's overvalued, yeah, it's overvalued from like an ancient indices of how people appraise things. But the market is now run on emotion. And if that company is now cleared essentially to meet with Saudi Arabia and make software solutions for Saudi Arabia, then that's going to be a huge opportunity for them, right? Because they've only really been deployed for the most part within the United States as a provider. We hold like our solution providers very close. We historically have not allowed exports of our top chips and our top military solutions to certain countries that can be deemed as a military conflict to the United States. And then now what we're seeing is Trump also met with the president of Syria, who we're now going to be supporting in taking off the terrorist watch list and developing, a more advanced relationship with. And I'm in favor of developing relationships with these countries. I think involving these countries in global trade, creating, a larger tourism base, creating a relationship with their government. Yes, are they where we want them to be right now? Definitely not. I definitely don't support the ethical rights of Syria or that women have or anything like that. But how do you get these countries to improve? You integrate them into the world instead of making them enemies of the world. And then we start trade with them. And that supports, domestic companies like
Yeah. The thing is, what the way of how we used to go about that, saying that we're going to come into this country, we're going to like give one group, whichever group we favor, more money, more weapons, and they're going to start a revolt, they're going to take over the government, and they're going to be the new party. Well, that almost always ends up like the regime change always ends up with just another terrorist group or another party there. So like you said, we need to change the actual fundamentals, because we can't come in there and just give them aid, because that doesn't work. It's like when people talk about the homeless crisis, like, oh, well, if you just gave X, Y, Z amount of dollars, well, that's the money is not the core problem. So you can't throw money at this situation. You need to throw, like you said, the tourism needs to go up, relations needs to go up, trade needs to go up, their GDP needs to grow, and that allows them to, leave that radical mindset behind.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, throwing money at something doesn't fix the problem, right? We've donated between like, so I've seen different numbers between 3 to 6 trillion to various countries in sub-Saharan Africa over the last like 20, 30 years, and there's been almost no benefit from that for anyone. Except for the people, who are now able to buy like golden Range Rovers and stuff. So the people there, yeah, it's a total backwards mentality, right? When I look at Saudi Arabia, there are so many reasons why it's a like natural strategic ally for the US. People don't remember the US saved a lot of the Middle Eastern countries during the Gulf War. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, the US Army literally, like, he was storming through every one of those Arab countries, and the US Army literally came in and destroyed his army, Saddam's army, in what, like a day or two, like super quickly. It was like one of the biggest military victories. Saudi Arabia was saying thank you, Kuwait was saying thank you, the Qataris were saying thank you, everyone was saying thank you, and I think we kind of forgot some of that, and there was some like hostility more recently between our side and those countries. And you look at Saudi, and they're like a natural enemy against Iran for 50, 60 years. And our relations with Iran aren't necessarily improving. Having Saudi as an ally, I think, is a good idea. Having the UAE as an ally is a good idea. Kuwait is a great idea. Qatar, I think, is a little bit more of a question mark.
I think having every country as an ally is a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't think that every country needs to think the exact same way that we do, right? If people want to live in a place where there's theoretically a democracy, people have equal rights, there's opportunity, we need to create systems in which they can move to the United States legally, right? And pay taxes, et cetera, et cetera. If they don't want to live here, right, and they want to live where they're from, and they don't want to move, then that country deserves to have its own way of how it operates and its rights. And a lot of other countries have a lot of good things going for them as well. I look at Dubai, for example, and a lot of people believe their education system is far surpassing ours. The equality, of the general public is fairly high, and they have a lot of good things going for them, but their country is run completely differently than ours, right, over the last 30 plus years. So that being said as well, I've been to China, and I lived in China for a little over a month, and China is super developed. People are motivated. You don't really see homeless people. They have a lot of problems, right? I don't agree with, forced labor and things like that in certain parts of the country. But that being said, there's a lot of really good things going on in the country. People are choosing to live there. They can leave China if they do decide to do that. I think what we need to do is encourage more tourism between China and the US. I think if more people from the US traveled to China and saw how they live, we talked about the episode with Speed, right? Where Speed actually went to China, the influencer, and kind of gave off the fact that their culture isn't as, backwards as it is depicted in the modern US media. It's very progressive. It's very forward. I would like to see more travel between China and the US, and I think that would lead to more global trade.
Yeah, I think we will see that. I actually feel really strongly about the next 1, 2, 3 years. I think we're going to open up a lot more, many more pathways between the U.S. and China. Now, again, I don't think China should be sending all their people here. I don't think we should be doing that. But I do think that it is good for people to come and to actually see the country. It's a very historic country. I think when people say, "Oh man, this country is a dictatorship. This country is XYZ," like, it's not like we have to have a little bit more nuance, right? Democracy is great, right? In many ways, and in many ways, it's also very flawed, and the systems that we have here in the UK and in Australia and whatnot, have created amazing things, and they've also, led to terrible things, right? Like we can all kind of just imagine, where we've been voted to many times, and I think of a country like Singapore, that was led by Lee Kuan Yew, and I was watching some clips recently of him, and it was kind of ruled with like an iron fist almost, and that was what's required, right? And if like the US and other places had said, hey, we're going to put sanctions on you, we're going to do XYZ just because you're taking this stance for a temporary period of time while you build your nation and like develop this like great like tourist hub, commerce hub, etc., it would have never worked out. So I think sometimes you have to kind of like sit back, and let them cook a little bit, and see what they can build. And of course, if there's really horrible things happening, you should like step in and say something or do something. But in general, you kind of want to watch how things go before you start casting judgment. So I think that is a good point, and I think we'll see a lot more tourism in China. I think we're going to see a lot more tourism in the Middle East, and that kind of stuff actually will of course like cool down tensions, right? When you have people speaking English in Saudi Arabia, people speaking English in China, there's going to be less animosity, I would imagine, to some extent, assuming the tourists aren't causing too much trouble and things like that. But yeah, I did want to quickly circle back to one stock that I had mentioned, UNH. I mean, we're seeing the market rallying. We've seen the S&P really reclaim its year-to-date high, and one company, a giant company, I think like I don't know what it is now, but it was like the fifth biggest company in the world. Maybe now it's like number 8 because the market cap has fallen so much. UNH, it was trading at $600 at the beginning of the year a share, and I think it hit $250. This is a company with hundreds of thousands of employees doing tens of billions of dollars in revenue a quarter, the biggest healthcare provider, I think, in the world. It's getting demolished. And today it had news of potential Medicare fraud investigations. What do you guys think about UNH? I'll give my take at the end.
Yeah, UNH. I mean, I'm cautious right now. It's looking like a free falling knife, and I'm not trying to catch that. I'll wait, man. If it gets in the hundreds, I'll probably look into it.
Yeah, I would say UNH, United Healthcare, has just not been a good story, right? The market is all emotion at this point, and the emotion is not favorable. I think that we have obviously the Luigi Mangione trial going on right now. People see this as kind of a, play to basically say that they don't support his conviction, which, obviously he did murder someone, whether that's true or not, we have to decide, but it does seem like he did murder someone, but people do like him as a murderer. And then UNH has been, caused a lot of deaths, unfortunately, through claims that have not been processed or disputed claims. And then the margin, if you look at it strictly from a business perspective, the margins on the healthcare business have been shrinking, right, over the last number of years. And it's just not really seeming like a positive direction for this industry. I don't know if it's something that can be disrupted with
Yeah.
AI, right? If there can be like a new provider solution that comes along, but just healthcare in the United States is broken, and United Healthcare is just facing a big, symptom of that,
Yeah.
right? Which is the costs are rising, the margins are shrinking, and
Yeah.
people are not
So
favorably supporting this business.
yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'll keep this as brief as I can. I am buying UNH at these levels. I have been buying really aggressively today, buying options contracts, but mostly just shares, buying calls, but mostly shares. I'll say a few reasons why. Number one, the insurance business is one of the greatest businesses in the history of the world. You collect premiums, and you collect premiums up front from, in UNH's case, tens of millions of people, and you are very slow to pay people out, on the back end. So you're making billions on the float, you're making, billions on the money you're getting it in. So it's a really great business. It's kind of like a casino. They are the house, right? And I'm not upset with insurance companies making money. The problem that people have with insurance companies is that they're really kind of acting in bad faith. I think part of the reason for that is because there's so much kind of fraud and abuse and waste in the system. Like, one of the reasons why UNH plummeted today about like 15-16% is that I think something came out that they were under investigation for Medicare fraud. I was looking into this for Medicaid fraud. 40% of New York City is on Medicaid. 50% of California is on Medicaid. Obviously, that's fraudulent. There aren't 50% of people who qualify, who genuinely qualify, that's supposed to be on Medicaid, which is the free insurance. So what happens with companies like UNH and anyone in the health insurance space knows this, when someone with Medicaid comes in, because the government will pay 100% of the claims right away, they just bill them out the ass. You come in for a broken arm, they're going to bill you $500,000 because they're going to check every single thing in your body because they know that government money is coming in. And when things like that change, they start really abusing the people who are actually paying insurance. There's a lot there. I think it's what they do is bad, but realistically, there's only two options for UNH. Either this tumbles like the insurance kind of scam house of cards, and the government end up saving like trillions of dollars because that's how much scams there are in the insurance space, or and I think that'd be great for the country. Probably not great for UNH, but they would be the winner in that case because of the biggest insurance company. Or this kind of blows over, and I think it'll probably blow over because I don't think we're going to give Luigi this win of like, he kills the CEO and then the company collapses and he becomes like a legitimate hero. I don't think that'll be good for public morale.
I just personally
think that's
don't
gonna
agree
happen.
that like all insurance is equal though. Like your statement is that all insurance is equal, and like you look at like Warren Buffett buying Geico, for example, and automotive
I would
claims
say
are a
health
lot more.
insurance. I would say health. Yeah, health
Yeah, health insurance is
specifically.
not the same though as like automotive insurance or like property insurance. Like he's looking at
Property insurance is very finicky too. I feel like we'll listen with everything. It's just
but it's not as finicky though because
Oh, no.
the prices of assets it can be very predictable, right? The labor is very predictable and the price of the asset is very predictable. And I agree, you are collecting upfront based on the price of an asset. The human life is a lot harder to predict, right? If someone loses their life, if they get an injury, they have to get, a valve replacement, whatever. There's a lot more like back and forth on that. And like what you say human life is worth and what I say it's worth can be completely different, right? Like there's lawyers that'll argue that a human life is worth $100 million. There's lawyers that'll argue on the other side that, it's worth nothing, right? You were going to die at some point. You're not really worth anything. And then when you have to get these surgeries, the other problem with the US healthcare system is the costs related. These hospitals basically have monopoly on getting something fixed. So say you need,
Yeah.
you have a heart attack, you have to go into the hospital. It can cost you $250,000, $300,000 to get that surgery minimum.
Yeah.
Right. And then they have to pay out on that. And it's just like a trickling down effect of debt.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's the problem with these eroding margins right now, is that the margins are getting tighter and tighter and tighter because the cost of healthcare are just going up because the hospitals can just keep raising the prices, and that has to drive United Healthcare to, obviously either be rejecting more claims or, to raise their prices, which they really have trouble doing.
Exactly.
They're just going to start losing customers.
And-
so
and-
I don't
and-
see like a rebound as quickly as you do, just because like I'm not buying it. I never buy downwards trends. I think buying a downward trend is just a good way to get caught in that downward trend, as opposed to waiting till it theoretically corrects. And if it does theoretically correct, then you can always buy on the uptrend.
Yeah, well, I'll say one last thing, and you bring up a good point, right? Like the healthcare space and healthcare insurance is very different from a lot of other insurance. Is I think filled with like bad actors, and sometimes it's unintentional. But you go to a hospital, right? You go in for like a broken finger, they're gonna bill you like $50,000. The reason they do that isn't because they actually think you're gonna pay $50,000. The reason they do that is because if someone has Medicare or Medicaid, they know that Medicaid and Medicare will pay that $50,000, and they can't like bill you $50,000 and then they can't bill Medicare 50 and you like 5. So what they do is they bill everyone the same, and then if you have an insurance provider, the insurance provider negotiates with them, right? So they'll get it down to like 10. Or if you have no insurance and they charge you 50, you'll call them after like a few months and say, "Hey, I'm not paying this. I'll give you 5K," and they'll say, "Oh, whatever, fine." That's kind of how the system works, which is unbelievably stupid. And on one more thing, it's on this like insurance space. You guys probably heard that Trump has essentially is talking about like drug prices coming down, and the way they're doing that is because they're getting rid of like the most favored nation status. Historically, like a pharma company that's based in the US, like Pfizer, right? Well, it'll cost them $5 billion to produce a drug. They sell that drug all over the world. But because the US consumer has so much more money, they'll charge a US consumer $1,000 for a drug, and they'll charge someone in Sudan $1 for the same drug. We are starting to change that policy, and essentially we've been subsidizing the entire world. People, there's pros and cons to it. Generally, I think it's positive that, it's not our responsibility to literally subsidize everyone's like medication. So we'll see how that plays out. I know a lot of people are really against it, but that's also another factor that's going to really affect insurance companies. That actually might affect them for the better, because drug prices should be coming down. But we'll have to see how that plays out.
It was over the weekend. It was your birthday, so I know you guys had a little Vegas trip.
We gotta wish Dakota a happy birthday. My guy turned 30 this weekend.
Old man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing before we wrap up, guys. So give us a little brief, recap of your Vegas trip, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ben was there. A few other homies were there. It was great. We started the weekend off with off-roading. We off-roaded in the Mojave Desert, which was very cool. I never off-roaded in the desert before. I've done ATVs, but I've never been in like a full-on Polaris dune buggy, 2024 Polaris. So that was pretty cool. It had like full roll cage, full strapped in like fighter pilot harness, which was cool. So you literally couldn't fall out of the dune buggy. So we were ripping 40 miles an hour through the desert. You know, Ben fell way behind at certain points just because, you know, he was a little more fearful than some of the other guys. But
My guy over here spreading fake news, bro.
we saw wild horses, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
There's like some wild horses in the desert, and then that was really sick. And then besides that, other highlights, we got a table at Excess, which was fun. Yeah, the music was really good.
Diplo was performing.
Yeah, Diplo was performing there. The talent was strong. I would say the table was like a little bit overpriced. You know, the table was like, we paid like $4,000 for the table. So, you know, it was like the discount beyond, you know, I think we got like $2,000 off the table or something like that. But we wasn't free. You know, and I'm trying to build up the reputation a little bit with the promoters and putting out some money the first time. So then when we go back, you know, things are taken care of a little bit more, paid up front. But our table is like behind the booth essentially. But there was these other two tables at Excess where they have like stage access. So there's two staircases that kind of go up to the booth. And then our table didn't have stage access, but it was still technically roped off. But as soon as anybody would see that they could get access to the tables that had the stage access, they like beelined it away from our table.
It's funny because you saw, like, you look when Diplo went on stage. I actually never even saw Diplo because from our perspective, all we saw was like 15 girls just sitting and standing at that table.
It was insane.
I don't even tell if he's there.
Hierarchy for these girls, like you don't understand. Like the girls, like I'll put that up there with the picture in the dude's car, like with a hunched over and the Lamborghini sign in the back, and then the girls chilling behind the DJ. I mean, like that's kind of like girl flexing. Like that's like guys get tables, girls get behind the DJ table, and that's the flex.
Highest level of social currency a girl can achieve is taking a photo behind the DJ table.
When I see that, I'm like, okay, so okay, we got it. You know, like you did what you had to do to get behind the table. Okay, cool.
It means there's a certain level of like class and attractiveness because a girl is not basically allowed, one, even in a club, if there's not a certain level of attractiveness, they'll be just excluded from entry. And then two, then they can get into a table. But level 3 and the maximum level, I would say, is getting, you know, behind the DJ booth. You can argue maybe the after party invite, but there's 3 distinct levels. If you're at the 3rd level, that's the highest class of prestige to other women who are watching that. And then they are, you know, upset or compare themselves online to social media. No.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, think about it this way. Like, if you're talking to someone, right? You're a guy, you're talking to a girl, and you see her like behind Diplo at a club. Like, that's not a positive, unless you're kind of a weirdo, like one of those, like, you know, whatever. Like, it's not like a positive signal for you. It's like, damn, like, she's chilling with Diplo. Like, it's not really like a positive vibe. So it is kind of a weird.
In their mind.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, if your girl is taking a picture behind the DJ booth, she was invited there by a man. I would say at least
the girl doesn't know. It's like the same thing. It's like, yo, you girls you're coming on a yacht, you know, but you guys are like, you know,
just because if a girl's on a yacht, it's game over for you. You just need to change that chapter. You need to move on. Does not mean that she's necessarily putting out. I will say that. It's not a guaranteed situation, but it's a possibility.
A negative sign. Vegas DJ booth, Miami DJ. It's a negative sign. And again, people could do whatever they want. They're free to do whatever they want. It's a negative sign. The same way that if you're a girl and you find out your boyfriend or whatever is like, you know, cash apping girls, sending girls like all this money on like, you know, OnlyFans, like for exclusive photos. It's like, you know, you gotta, you know, that might not be your guy, you know. So
honestly, it's not even as bad because at least with the OnlyFans stuff, it's all digital. You might find out your guy's kind of a pervert, but he might still be a loyal pervert.
yeah, but bro, he's, you know, if he wants to meet up with that person,
He wants to meet up with them, that's different. But if he's just like, I have like a desire for certain things, but I'm loyal, you know, that's one thing. But if
yeah, it's a
girls can
loyal.
also do all these activities and still be loyal. So like, I'm not joking to generalize the population. I'm just saying, statistically speaking, it was just an interesting position at our table. We saw firsthand society
get killed, bro. I mean, you can go, you know, you could walk into a burning like building and survive.
It's it's just risk to reward, you know. We're talking we talk about it with everything. It's like,
but a guy and you're at the club and like you have access to that DJ booth, right? Which we all kind of do want to have at the end of the day, and like we theoretically all of us do. You know, it does provide a lot of opportunity, you know, in those situations.
And let's, I know we're coming up on time. I do want to mention the Sphere.
Yeah,
so
the Sphere is awesome. Yeah.
For anyone who hasn't been to Vegas yet or who hasn't seen the Sphere, I mean, this thing is insane. We saw Dead & Company. Speaking for myself, and I think this applies to you, Dakota, like, you know, I'm not a fan of the Grateful Dead. I wasn't like a fan of Dead & Company, but that was like a crazy concert. I mean, the visuals, just the vibes, like you're literally inside a giant sphere and all above you is like all these screens, and it's not like a bunch of the TV screens, it's just one giant screen. You literally feel like you're in outer space when they show certain things. You feel like you're flying when they show certain things. So honestly, one of the coolest concert experiences I've ever been. Anyone who's going to Vegas, I highly recommend checking the Sphere out. Doesn't even matter what show it is. It could be like literally the most random thing. Just go, because right now that experience is unparalleled.
Yeah, it cost about $2 billion to build the Sphere. But then when you actually look at the ticket prices of going to the Sphere, it's like on average, at minimum price is like $300 to go to the Sphere, and tickets go up to thousands of dollars. So even with that level of investment, they're going to pay off the Sphere in like 15, 20 years with the number of shows that they're now having there. I don't know how Ben couldn't be a fan of Dead & Co. I thought Dead & Co. was great.
I mean, I wasn't a fan. Like, I never listened to their music. Like, I think their music is chill, right? I wouldn't listen to it on Spotify, but I would say like
they jammed out. I don't know. Like that music was crazy. And then there's visual agencies that basically put together the show, and you basically can see forever in the Sphere. The visuals are going on. It looks like infinite visuals, super colorful. The crowd was feeling it. There's a lot of deadheads there. People that have been going to see the Dead for the last, 40, 50 years, which was pretty cool. Dead & Co. as a business is pretty amazing too. They've done, over $1 billion in, lifetime revenue related to that franchise that they've created. It's one of the most successful music franchises of all time. So yeah, it was super cool. And that wrapped up the Vegas trip. The boys had a great time overall. And we definitely got to do more stuff.
Another great episode, guys. Another great episode in the books.
We're putting this out because we want to put out like really high quality, valuable content. Like there's some funny stuff, there's some personal stuff, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're putting out high quality content because we want to share valuable information and our perspectives that are panning out most of the time. So that's all for me. Dakota, Sam, been another one. Appreciate you guys. We will catch you all next week. Adios.
Take it easy, guys.
All right.